And this week, I am bringing to us a challenge, or a challenge text, as I like to call them. I'm bringing to us something that's going to make us think. I really want us to dwell on this text, speak over it, debate about it, and then when you get the opportunity, if you get the chance, I invite you to comment below. I invite you to engage with me, engage with us in this text, and let me know what you think. And so I'm going to take us right through it, and then I'm going to give us some basic talking points, some basic elements to go off of. And then I would very much love to hear what you have to say, what you have to think. So this week we are in the book of Romans. I invite you to open your Bible in the book of Romans. Romans chapter 13. Romans chapter 13, we'll begin with verse 1 and we'll read on to verse 4. Romans 13, 1 through 4, and it reads like this: Let every person be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those authorities that exist have been instituted by God. Therefore, whoever resists authority resists what God has appointed, and those who resist will incur judgment. Verse 3, For rulers are not a terror to good conduct, no, but to bad. Do you wish to have no fear of the authority? Then do what is good, and you will receive its approval. For it is God's servants for your good. But if you do what is wrong, you should be afraid. For the authority does not bear the sword in vain. It is the servant of God to execute wrath on the wrongdoer. This is Paul writing to the church in Rome. And Paul says to Christians, to everybody in the church at Rome, submit yourselves to the authorities, to the governing authorities. Let me put it this way in our modern terms. Paul is calling on all Christians and he says, be submissive to your government. Because according to Paul, every government that exists has been set by God. It has been established by God. And so because of that, we have to engage the government. We have to be submissive to the government. And so I'm calling this segment Engaging Caesar. Dealing with Caesar. Trying to figure out how to live under the rule of Caesar. And when I say Caesar, I'm simply referring to the government. The reason why I use the term Caesar to represent government is because Jesus, when he was asked about paying taxes, he said, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and unto God what is God. And so Paul will continue on in verse 7 and say, pay to all what is due them, taxes to whom taxes are due, revenue to whom revenue is due, respect to whom respect is due, honor to whom honor is due. But here's what I want to bring to us. Here's where I'm asking us to begin to think. Here is where I am asking us to engage the text. What do we think about what Paul is saying? If you ever thought that Christianity was simple and easy and clear cut, then this maybe will allow you to begin to think about what it means to be Christian, because we live in a society where our government is not always looking out for people. And so what are we to do with this text that tells us that we should be submissive to governments, when indeed governments are not behaving in the way that Paul describes? Paul says that if you do good, then you have nothing to fear, because nothing will befall you. Well, we know that to be untrue here in our own context. In fact, if you are a person that is brown, then you know exactly how the weight of the government can weigh on you sometimes, and a lot of times unjustly. But that is not only for brown people. Even white folk here in the United States, there are some times when you are also falsely accused and falsely jailed. And so I ask this question: what do we make of Paul's called to be submissive and obedient to government. But remember, Paul was not making this call in a context where everything was rosy between the people and the government. Remember that he's writing this during the times of the Roman Empire. Remember that he's writing this to the church right inside of Rome, where people were being persecuted, where the church members were being hunted down, where governments were killed, where the government was killing people simply because they were worshiping a different God than the one they had known, the ones they had been used to. So I call upon us again. Let us think about this. Let me know what you think. How should we engage this text where Paul is calling us to submit ourselves and be obedient to government and the governing authority? How shall we engage Caesar? I remember one of our founding fathers, was either Origen or Thomas Aquinas, but I believe it was Thomas Aquinas, that said that we have a moral responsibility to break any law that is immoral. We have a moral responsibility to break any immoral law. So comment below, let me know what you think. How shall we engage Caesar? How do we reconcile the text in Romans chapter 13 verses 1 through 4, and if you want to read the full text, then read on to verse 7. How do we reconcile that with the world in which we live and with the realities that we see on the ground? I am genuinely curious to hear your take on the text. So take some time. Let us know what you think. And together, let us get on the way. I don't have time to